first, coffee. Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for October 5th through 11th. This week I read 2 books, I watched 3 shows, I watched 4 movies, and I listened to 3 books. The first book that I finished this week is Outrage, Why the Fight for LGBTQ+ Equality is Not Yet Won and What We Can Do About It. This one is written by Ellen Jones, who I've been personally following online for years, and this one is UK-centric, but it does have data from other places as well. This book is broken up into different sections that you might think of when you think of different sections of society, and it talks about how those sections of society and queer people within those sections of society are still being failed, even though we're fed the narrative that, hey, marriage equality exists, so like things must be good. It's fine. You can be complacent now. It's fine. It's not like other people are trying to take away your rights, or the fact that there isn't actually marriage equality. Which, I hate to break it to you, but that is actually the case. The people that make the arguments of just calm down, you can get married now, don't seem to realize that A, it's harder to get divorced, because apparently adultery just isn't a thing under UK law unless there's a rooster and a papaya involved. If there's 2 roosters or 2 papayas, that's not adultery, she says, thinly veiling her rage. In addition to talking about how marriage equality isn't exactly equal and never actually has been, it goes on to talk about when queer people age, what happens in religious communities, the different things that people who are queer typically face at a greater rate than straight people. And I am just urging you, no matter what your orientation, no matter if you're cisgender or transgender, read this book. It's all very important information, and even though I'm in the queer community, I did not know a bunch of this. So yeah, it's not as easy as you're equal now, just get over it, because we're really not. And we have to keep fighting for human rights. After that, I needed something a little bit lighter and something I've been meaning to pick up for years now, and that's Fangs by Sarah Anderson. If you've been on the internet, which hi, you're here, so yes, you've probably seen at least one comic under the name of Sarah Scribbles, and this is written by the same person, but not in the same art style. This is a graphic novel in vignettes about Jimmy, who is a werewolf, and Elsie, who is a vampire, and they are dating, and the different circumstances they get themselves into being this type of couple. It was super quick to get through. I actually read this at a silent reading club meeting I went to yesterday, and I absolutely flew through it. I was giggling from the very first panel. I was even compelled to take a picture of one specific panel and send it to my best friend because I knew she would particularly enjoy it. 10 out of 10 would recommend. As for the shows I watched this week, I watched the 5th series and the 6th series of Prime Suspect, which means that I only have 1 series left. I'm really enjoying this. I like seeing Helen Mirren as the lead in this show. I love having these really long drawn out episodes where you really get to the heart of cases and trying to figure out who did what. And if it's a 2-parter, there's always something in the middle of the case that just completely throws things off. And this means I'm probably going to finish this show this week, so if you have any suggestions on BritBox, please let me know because I will need a new show soon. As for the other 2 shows I watched this week, these are the shows that I'm watching episodically with Chad, who is currently in Europe, so we set up a FaceTime and we watched them on YouTube together. The first one is Taskmaster. We watched the 4th episode of the 20th season. This is always just really fun. It's always really interesting to see the people that kind of break the tasks, like do things that are technically correct based on how things were written down, and seeing how that actually affects their timing if it's a timed event. The other episode was the 3rd episode of the 15th season of Jet Lag the Game, which is the All-Star season that is ongoing right now. They are playing tag across Europe. I have a few things to say about this episode. Firstly, the people doing the running had a really good run and then got a very unfortunate curse, but they still might actually make it, which would be amazing because it's like day 2, and I don't think anybody's actually made it to the destination that they've set up as their point before. I think they've just won because they've been in their region at the end of the game. And 2, having been to Charles de Gaulle Airport, I cannot believe that the other team got through security and to their gate in time for their flight, considering they had to start outside of security at 6 and their flight left at 6:45. That doesn't make any sense to me. When we flew into Charles de Gaulle, it felt like it took the taxi at least 20 minutes just to leave Charles de Gaulle. That's how big this place is. So they must have known exactly which gate they would be going to, which I'm just like, but how? Half the time they don't tell you that until within a certain time frame, and they have to pick where they're standing at the end of the day and start exactly there the next day after the rest period. So it's just magic every time this works out for them, because it just seems like garbage to me. Like, there's no way. I am always that person that's there really early, and I want to make sure I have adequate time to get through all the stops and get to the place I'm going, and then I sit by the gate and I just enjoy the fact that I'm definitely not going to miss this flight for anything that I did. It might get delayed or whatever, but I'm not the problem. And yet it always works out for the guys on jet lag, and I don't understand. As for movies I watch, the first one is a rewatch we do pretty much every year, sometimes multiple times a year, and that's Shaun of the Dead. This movie is 21 years old now, and I actually watched it in theaters when it first came out. Something I am weirdly proud of, because I didn't know anything about this movie going into it. I just went with somebody I happened to go to high school with, who I happened to be visiting at the time, and she was like, hey, let's go to this movie, and I was like, cool. And that's actually the last time I saw her. So thank you, Vanessa from high school. If you've somehow never heard of this is the first in the Cornetto trilogy, and it centers a guy named Shaun who has to get some things sorted in his life and then suddenly finds himself in the middle of London in the middle of an apocalypse of the undead variety. Suddenly he has this plan to get his best friend and his girlfriend and their various other people around them to somewhere secure so they can just ride this out. But does it go to plan? Of course not. This movie is just so clever and I love it every time I watch it. A good segue between Shaun of the Dead and the next movie is the next movie actually stars Nick Frost, who is the second in Shaun of the Dead, and that's Getaway. Apparently he wrote this one, which is great because Simon Pegg wrote the other one, along with Edgar Wright. Getaway is interesting in that it's very much English family goes to a place, creepy things start happening. However, there's little red flags here and there about certain characteristics and certain things that are going on, and some of the ways in which it was written I was just like, that was unnecessary, or that was weird, or actually I saw this twist coming, but if you don't know about the twist ahead of time, I could see this being a thing that people don't see ahead of time. It did do some interesting and inventive things. Some of the cinematography was kind of cool. There were certain costumes involved because the characters were actually going to see this play that happens on this very small island, and some of the costumes in the play were really funny in certain circumstances. So I enjoyed my time with it, but I wouldn't say it is a favorite movie of mine. Next, continuing on with the triple October of it all, we watched Vamps. This is about a couple of different vampires that live in New York City. They are played by Alicia Silverstone and Kristen Ritter. They both got turned when they were in their 20s. However, Alicia's character, Goody, was actually turned like in the 1800s, so she is much older than Kristen's character, whose name I can't remember, but if she were her biological age, she'd be in her 40s. This is a secret that Goody has kept from the other person because she's like, I don't want her to think that I'm so much older than her because I really like having this best friendship. And she thinks it might be tainted by the age difference. This is basically about them going about their undead lives, just their day-to-day or night-to-night occurrences. They are the vampire version of vegan, which in this case means they don't eat humans, they don't eat domesticated animals, they pretty much just feed on the blood of rats. But as soon as they start naming things like pigeons, they also can't eat those, so that's a concern for them. And in this movie, somebody from Goody's past comes back into her life, and the other character starts dating this guy whose last name happens to be Van Helsing. He is played by Cousin Cutie from Downton Abbey, and his father is inconceivable, so like the cast is really fun. Also, the person that turned both of these women into vampires is Sigourney Weaver. With a cast like this, I have no idea how I had never heard of this before, but I believe this came out in the 2010s. It was fun and camp and silly and enjoyable. As for a horror movie from a perspective I never imagined I'd actually see, the other movie we watched this week is Good Boy. This is a horror movie from the perspective of a dog. And yes, Indy is a very good boy, and I would love to give him all the head pats and scritches because my goodness, this dog goes through a lot. So the clever thing about this is we don't really see a lot of the faces of the humans in this, and I think there's only like 5, maybe 6 people in this film. At the beginning of this film, Indy wakes up and is on the couch with his human, and his human is not in a good way. From there, we actually get this montage of Indy growing up and his human going to the hospital and us kind of finding out over phone calls and like voice things that are happening in the background that things aren't going well for this human, and he decides that he's going to go live in his grandfather's old place in the middle of nowhere, and his sister is really concerned about this situation, but she can't stop him. And while they're at this isolated location, creepy things start happening. This movie is just so incredibly clever in the way that it's shot, the way that it's paced, the way that everything revolves around Indy, and it's just so good. If you have the chance, I highly recommend it. As for the books I listened to this week, the first one is The Titan's Curse, which is the third in the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series. In this one, Percy and Annabelle get a message from Grover being like, hey, I'm at this certain school, I think there's a couple of students here who are definitely half-bloods, we need to come investigate this. And when they do that, yes, we meet a couple of new half-bloods and a character that my best friend has been like, when you meet this character, you're going to love this character, he goes on to do great things in the rest of the series, and I'm like, yes, I'm looking forward to it, great. So far, Nico is adorable. However, this meeting doesn't go all to plan. One of the main characters is just taken out of the situation for most of the book. From there, they're still trying to track down the bad guy that you meet in the first book, which I won't ruin for you if you've never read the series before, as well as continue other goals, and there is another quest because there's always a quest. These books continue to be fun and interesting, and I was really glad that this one wasn't as formulaic as the first two because there were certain things in the first two that matched beat to beat, and I'm glad that didn't happen in this third book because if it did, I'd be much less likely to continue, but I do have the next book on hold. Next, we have another book in another magical world, and that's Her Majesty's Royal Coven. This takes place in a world where witches are in fact a real reality, and for the most part, people in the world are mundanes. They don't have magic, but there are certain people around the world who do have covens, and they work with the local governments when needed. And as we meet the characters in the very beginning of this book, they're 13 and they're just taking their initiation rites, but for the rest of the book, they're actually in their 30s. From this point, we head hop really seamlessly between a few different characters. In fact, 4 out of the 5 characters that we meet at the beginning are the people that we're following, and you find out why we're not following the 5th one when you get into this book. In the intervening years, we do know that there was a war at some point because inevitably there's always a witch or a warlock that figures they could run the world much better than whoever's currently in power, and they try to take over, and then people have to stop them. It just happens every once in a while. Now at this point, only one of them actually works for the Royal Coven in the UK, which is where this is set. Another one of them has created her own coven specifically for witches of color. Another one has just gone off to be a vet in a small town. And the third is actually just happy not doing any magic and being a mom and a wife and enjoying her life. However, there's a prophecy that a certain child will bring upon the Leviathan, which is a really bad thing to happen, and there is this one certain child that is found who has a lot of power. Now, when Neve used to work for Her Royal Majesty's Coven, she actually helped rehabilitate different witches that weren't found early enough in their lives to really be integrated into the society, so she decides to do that for this child as well. However, certain things are learned about this child that Neve is sympathetic to. However, Helen, who actually runs the coven, is just like, no, I don't think so. I don't think I'm gonna let that person in my coven. In fact, I don't think they should exist whatsoever because I don't want this apocalypse to happen. So these people are definitely at odds with each other. This book is so good. The way it ends still has me in a tizzy and makes me very excited that the whole trilogy as well as a prequel book are currently out, and I am very excited to get my hold for the second book because, my god, some stuff went down in the very last bit of this book. I don't know if it was an epilogue. It couldn't have been an epilogue. There's no way you could skip this and understand what's going on when you get to the next book. It's just, I don't know where they're gonna go from here. It was a really bold move. So yeah, I am very excited to read the next one. I can tell you that. The third audiobook that I listened to this week was a little bit less stressful, although very high stakes as well, and that's The Curse of Eelgrass Bog. Our main character in this one is a 12-year-old girl named Kes. She lives in the Unnatural History Museum, which is right next to Eelgrass Bog, with her older brother Oliver, who is 15, and he has been put in charge because their parents have gone on a trip to Antarctica to do with something with the unnatural things found under the ice in Antarctica. Kes feels this really big pressure to keep the museum running while her parents are gone because it is their livelihood, and Oliver seems to be trapped in the library at all times just doing paperwork and not actually maintaining the museum whatsoever. So she's doing all of that at the same time she's trying to go into Eelgrass Bog to find more specimens for the museum. However, her brother is constantly like, stop going into Eelgrass Bog, you're not supposed to do that, I'm in charge, mom and dad put me in charge, and he's not being helpful whatsoever, their money is dwindling, and she's just trying to do what she can. Her only real friend is a shrunken head called Shrunken Jim. He lives in a glass jar and tells her stories about Eelgrass Bog and this world that exists underneath it. One day, a girl her age actually comes to the museum, which is so rare that she forgets how much she's actually supposed to charge people for admission, and she seems really interested in particular about the history of Eelgrass Bog, and it turns out that her grandfather grew up in the area and left her letters saying that she has to fix a situation that he wasn't able to fix when he was a child. So, adventure time. Now, reading this as an adult, admittedly, is kind of an advantage because I could look at certain things and be like, oh yeah, this girl is cursed. Like, obviously, 1, it's in the title, so that's not a leap. 2, certain things that are happening and certain things she just doesn't understand or she has problems with her memory. Of course, there's a curse involved, but I was still excited to see how it got placed, why it got placed, how certain things intersected. It was a really fun time. This is also the beginning of a budding sapphic romance as well as a big adventure, and we get get to see these different cool characters along the way, I can highly recommend this. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!